Hey everybody, welcome to Mindset 101, one of the most foundational classes that we have here at Impact Theory University. And I am super excited to go through this with you because mindset is one of the most foundational things in your life. It is certainly the thing that transformed my entire life, and I'll go deeper into my story in a minute. But the reason that this is one of the most important things that you could be learning about is because what you think of as you is really this very complicated interplay of a lot of things, including beliefs, values, identity, frame of reference, which is something that we will definitely talk about, inborn traits, both physical and emotional, repetitive thoughts, your habits and routines, the rules you have in your life, which is a whole course unto itself, and a bunch of other shit. And I want you guys to really understand that mindset is a set of beliefs around what is possible in life. So getting that right, getting your understanding of exactly what you're capable of, exactly what the world is going to bring to you, all of that stuff is incredibly, incredibly important. And mindset undermines all of that. And it's really going to determine the entire quality of your life. And there are two things that we're going to discuss in detail in this course, and that is a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And once you understand the difference between those two and how to build a growth mindset and, quite frankly, avoid a fixed mindset, then you're going to have the foundation that you need to build any kind of success on top of that you want. But it really does all begin with that mindset. Now, why does this course in particular matter? Nobody sums that up better than Nietzsche. And the quote goes like this: "To those human beings who are of any concern to me, I wish suffering, desolation, sickness, ill treatment, indignities. I wish that they should not remain unfamiliar with profound self-contempt, the torture of self-mistrust, the wretchedness of the vanquished. I have no pity for them, because I wish them the only thing that can prove today whether one is worth anything or not. That one endures." I have the chills on my face right now. The reason that that quote gives me the chills is because, to me, the very meaning of life is to see how many skills you can acquire that have utility and then put those skills to use in the service of something bigger than yourself. But the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to build into the core of your being the ability to endure. Life is hard. Life is going to kick you in the face. There are going to be 1,000 times in your life when you're going to want to give up. And the only thing that is going to see you through, the only thing that's going to make sure that you actually fucking endure is your mindset. And if you get that right, if you lay the foundation for that, if you put all the pieces in place, then you're going to persevere. Then you're going to push through. Then you're going to be able to see things through to the end. But if you don't do that, then you're going to break. And that's what I see happen to so many people. And that's where my own life started, was not believing in myself. And that is one of the most important things for you to understand, is that your mindset is one of the most important feeders into your perspective. And perspective is everything. And the first most important decision that we all have to make, and this is one of my favorite Einstein quotes, is each and every one of us has to decide whether we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. And understanding that that is a choice, that's the critical part. And a lot of people don't see that as a choice. They believe that the universe is either working with them or it's working against them, and it's just a matter of fact. It isn't something that's open to interpretation. And what I want you guys to understand with the whole Mindset 101 course is one very simple thing. It is a decision. It's something that you have to decide. And whatever it is that you decide, you're going to end up seeing the evidence for that. So you have to be really careful whether you decide that life is difficult, it's this slew of things that's coming at you that's trying to break you and nothing ever good happens to you. Or if you choose to believe, no matter what happens to you, you can always choose your response. You can always choose to believe that it's happening for you and not to you. And in that perspective, in having that mindset, then you're going to begin to look for the solutions. You're going to look for the ways out. You're going to look for the lesson that you can learn in the hardship. That is mindset. It's a subset of beliefs about what you're capable of and what the world really is at its foundation, whether it's working for you or against you. So understand that these things are all a choice. Mindset also just affects a whole lot of stuff in your life. From happiness, it affects the outcome because you're going to take on the burden of learning and growing and being able to flip something from a negative to positive. It removes you as an obstacle, which is something we're going to talk more about. I think the number one thing that holds people back is their own mindset. When they see or when they choose to believe that the world is working against them, they just quit. And why wouldn't you? Why would you try to move forward if it's hopeless? If the world is just a deck of cards that's stacked against you and you're never going to be able to get ahead. I get that. And that's why I tell people the only belief that matters is that you can grow and get better. Once you believe that, then everything unlocks from that. And another thing that having a growth mindset is going to help you do is it's going to keep you open to criticism. A lot of people are shut down by criticism, and a lot of times that criticism is going to unlock a whole new set of potential for you. And it's going to reframe stress as challenges instead of something that's dangerous. Mindset also plays deeply into your self-esteem. It also helps you regulate your emotions, and it, like I said, is going to allow you to flip things from negative to positive. All right, that is why this is so critically important. Now I want to walk you through why so many people struggle with this. Building an empowering mindset is very difficult for people because they're fighting against oftentimes decades worth of entrenched beliefs that started when they were a kid. One of the most devastating things about me, and this really frustrates me about mindset, and it frustrates me about the general importance of childhood, is that, first of all, many people have a shitty childhood. They have parents that are modeling terrible behaviors, and they don't realize that the mindset that's building up in them is actually choices that they're making along the way, whether it's just to listen to what your parents say or the behavior that's being modeled by your friends or what you see your teachers doing. But all of that stuff are these little choices that are being made when you're far too young to understand that they're choices, and they're beginning to solidify and then hardwire in your mind. So when you get caught up in these negative loops, which happen in childhood, they begin to seem like objective truth instead of recognizing them for what they are, which is really just these patterns that have become hardwired. So Mindset 101 is about going in, unwinding that stuff, but it's incredibly difficult because it's been happening since you were a kid. So one of the things you're going to want to do in this course is to just begin to recognize the patterns that have happened, that have been planted in your youth, and begin to supplant them with new patterns. The easiest way to sum it up in a single sentence is to say most people build their mindset by accident. It just happens slowly over time. Another thing that can have a really big impact on people is things like bullying or just overall negative experiences. And those are the things that I'm talking about when I say by accident. It's just life. It's happening to you. But all the while you're imprinting what that means. You're making these little decisions about what does it mean to be bullied? Does it mean that the world is against me? What does it mean to have something negative happen to me? All of that stuff plays into your belief about yourself and the world. Another thing that really messes with people is they don't have a real understanding of the brain. This was a big breakthrough moment for me when I really began to research the brain and came across the whole notion of brain plasticity. When I was growing up, people actually debated whether or not an old dog could learn new tricks. And people said that you're born with a certain number of brain cells and that's it. And hey, every time you go out and party, you're just diminishing your brain cells and you die with far fewer than you began with. And now science has proven that absolutely is not true. And being able to imagine that process, I think, will really help you guys. People also hold the mistaken belief that only kids are able to learn, that, up until say 11, 12, or 13, it's easy to learn, and people often cite languages. And after that, it gets a lot harder. But again, that just isn't true. It doesn't match the brain science. It just, as a lifestyle, we don't often put ourselves through the paces that kids are going through. And that doesn't mean the kids don't have an easier time. They do, but it is certainly something that you can do to a profound extent as you get older. But thinking that you can't is really going to hold you back. Now, one thing that I think I need to address is I'm not saying that we're blank slates. Unfortunately, we're not. I wish we were, but we all do have certain predilections, things that we learn more easily than somebody else. So some of you guys are going to struggle with some of the basics around mindset. It may be harder for you than somebody else. But my question is, and now what? All of us are going to struggle with something. And so getting over that and not playing the victim, not worrying about whether it's harder for you than it is for other people, but just getting after it. There's a whole bunch of other things that may impact you, from being less open, having lower agreeability, having higher anxiety, a desire for emotional safety, low self-esteem, not taking ownership in your life. The list goes on and on. All of those things are going to be something that you have to take control of, that you have to figure out what in that pack of things that could be holding you back is actually stopping you, and you're going to need to remove that as a roadblock. And that's one of the things that is at the very foundation of a growth mindset. So we are going to address that. So don't worry if you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling alone, if you feel like all of those things apply to you, and there's no way that you could overcome this stuff. I promise you, by the end of this class, you're going to be empowered. You're going to know exactly what to do. You're going to know the exact steps that you need to take to get on the other side of this. Now, I can hear you asking, Tom, why should we be listening to you? And the answer to that question is, I've been through it. I went through starting from the worst fixed mindset that you can imagine, making horrific and stupid decisions because I had a fixed mindset. At one point, I actually referred to myself as the king of remedial jobs. And all I was trying to do was put myself in a position where I'd be smarter than the people around me. And that is a terrible strategy, especially when you're not the brightest person around. So I got a 990 on my SATs. I took it twice. That is my combined score, which is terrible, but that was where I started. And my whole life was about looking smart, not getting better, not educating myself, not actually becoming smart. My whole life was about looking smart. And when I went to college, I ended up having a pretty emotionally difficult time. I did well in the beginning and I was really crushing it, and that's a story for another day. By the time I finished, I felt like a complete and absolute failure. And when I walked out of college, I really felt like I was walking into hopelessness. I did not know how to make something of my life. And I felt like I had failed in film school, which is what I studied. And I came out not knowing how I was going to rebuild from the realization that I did not have talent. And that's not me being humble. That was the reality. And my life has since proven that you can build talent. But at the time, I realized I didn't have talent. And what did that mean for the rest of my life? And then I got a lucky break and I started teaching. And in teaching, I realized I was in so far over my head that the only way that I was going to be able to go into class and not embarrass myself was to start doing all this crazy research at night, putting these lesson plans together. And then in doing that and going in and teaching the students, I realized I actually could make their films better. And in realizing that I could make their films better, I started to ask myself the very simple question, can I not make my own films better? And that combined with my obsessive reading about the brain, because I was trying to avoid a slow slide to depression. I needed to believe that there was hope. I needed to believe that I could get better. And like I said, at the time, it was hotly debated whether or not older people could learn new things, whether the brain was truly plastic or whether it was fixed. And I decided, again, these are choices. I decided to believe that I could get good at anything. I decided to believe that the brain really was plastic. And that ended up being one of these transitional moments in my life upon which everything else rested. And because I made that decision, I started to see it everywhere, most notably when I was teaching. And then, the break of all breaks, I met fellow entrepreneurs and they invited me to work in their startup. And they said, look, you can have any job in this company you want, but you have to become the right person for the role. And that meant I was gonna have to learn a lot. I was in so far over my head. I had no idea what was going on, but I was so desperate to get rich, which is a story for another day. But at that time in my life, I was so desperate to get rich, I thought, I've gotta fucking learn this. I've got to figure this stuff out, otherwise I'm gonna get left behind. And so that became my obsessive mission, was to get good, to learn. But by being around other people that had what we would now call a growth mindset, unfortunately, I did not have those words back then, but what we now call a growth mindset, being around people that were convinced to the core of their being that they could improve, I then adopted that same belief. I adopted the value system of the people that I was around, moving quickly, pushing myself, getting way the hell outside of my comfort zone, making massive demands of myself, holding myself to a standard, taking complete and total ownership of my life. And it changed everything. And I took myself from scrounging in my couch cushions to find enough change to put gas in my car, that is a real story, to building a billion-dollar business. And that transformation, which was purely a transformation of mindset and skill set, is exactly what we're going to be talking about in this course. And the very goal of this course is to help you guys understand at a detailed level the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. We're going to cover that in detail. We're going to talk about the beliefs that are needed to build a growth mindset. We're going to talk about how to develop your talent and intelligence, which most people think is a fixed trait. that would be a sign of a fixed mindset. We're going to talk about the process to acquiring skills. We're going to talk about how to avoid the traps that are coming your way. And let me tell you right now, if that sounds insurmountable, let me promise you, if I can do it, you can do it. Too often people look at me as the after picture and they don't realize just how much I had to crawl through, including low self-esteem, massive insecurities, crippling anxiety. At one point, I couldn't even tell a story in front of 5 people in my own family because my voice was shaking. I was so freaked the fuck out. And right now I'm around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like we have about 7 people in this room. I routinely speak in front of massive crowds. And all of that was a process. It is a process that is teachable. It is things that you can go through to completely and radically change your mindset. And in changing your mindset, you change the wiring of your brain. And that's what I want you guys to understand. You can change the physical structures and the functions of your mind using the things that we're going to cover in this class. So my friends, get ready, because in the second section of this class, we're going to cover the specifics. I'm going to give you the exact tools that you're going to need. So when you're ready, go ahead and join me in section 2. I'll see you there. Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of Mindset 101. Today we're going to go into details. Buckle up, my friends. We have a lot to cover today. We're going to get hyper specific. And the big thing that I want you to take away from all of this is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And at the end of this, what I want you to be empowered to do is develop a growth mindset. It's going to be a process, but it is a very doable process. Now, I want to remind you of the quote that we talked about in the first class, which is from Einstein, and it's all about the most important decision you're ever going to make. And that decision is whether we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. And the reason that I harp on this quote is, one, it seems like something that is either just true or not. And I want you guys to understand at the most foundational building block level is a decision. And all of this is a decision. And deciding whether something is objectively true or subjectively true is pretty irrelevant. When you're building your mindset, you really have to simply decide that it's possible. And the reason that you have to decide that, the reason that I highly encourage you to believe, to decide to believe that you live in a friendly universe, is that's going to give you the energy to move forward because you believe that your efforts are going to be rewarded. It's often what I refer to as the only belief that matters, that your energies are going to be rewarded. All right, now I have another quote for you. This one is trite, it's super cheesy, but it is also insanely powerful, and it comes from Henry Ford. And he said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. I live by that maxim. I know you guys have heard it 1,000 times, but really, really internalize it. This is one of those things that when we talk about a fixed mindset, I promise you, I see people come back to this all the time. And here at Impact Theory, this is one of those things that we call each other out on from time to time. Even I will find myself slipping back into a fixed mindset, and someone has to call me out and say, hey, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So just remember that as you go through this and it seems overwhelming, or you're going through anything and it seems overwhelming, just remember, it all starts with that belief. Now, let's take it out of the ether and let's pull it down and make it highly actionable. When you have a fixed mindset, it means that you believe you were born with it, that your talent and intelligence are just inborn traits. When you have a growth mindset, you believe that they're malleable. Now, I really, really wish that I had Carol Dweck's immortal book, which I consider the most foundational book, the most important book in the English language. It is the book that you should start with if you're going to read. So I want to quote her directly. I think that she has such a profound understanding of this, and she is a researcher and professor at Stanford University. The growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts, your strategies, and help from others. Although people may differ in every which way in their initial talents and aptitudes, interests, or temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. She goes on to say, in a fixed mindset, students believe their basic abilities, their intelligence, their talents are just fixed traits. They have a certain amount and that's that, and their goal becomes to look smart all the time and never look dumb. In a growth mindset, students understand that their talents and abilities can be developed through effort, good teaching, and persistence. They don't necessarily think everyone's the same or anyone can be Einstein, but they believe everyone can get smarter if they work at it. Let that sink in. I'm not saying we're blank slates. I talked about that in the first part. We're all different. We all learn at different speeds. We all have advantages in one area or another. And it can be very, very frustrating when something that's important to us also happens to align in an area where we suck. But I want you to understand, even though you may never be Einstein, even though you may never be Jordan or Kobe or whoever it is that you look up to, you can always get better. And one of my favorite examples, if you guys are basketball fans, which ironically I'm not, but I know this example, there was a guy that played against Jordan whose name was Muggsy Bogues. Muggsy Bogues was 5'3". 5'3" is the shortest player ever to play in the NBA. And he had an extraordinary career from a stats perspective. He's one of the best that ever played the game. And he did it all while being 5'3", and he just fucking outworked people. He put in the work. He hustled his ass off. He didn't take no for an answer. And part of it was he grew up in the inner cities, and he so desperately wanted a way out that he chose to believe that no matter what people told him, no matter the fact that the deck seemed stacked against him, that even though he may never be better than Jordan, that he could become extraordinary. And that's what I want you guys to believe. Again, it's the only belief that matters. Once you believe that you can get good at something, that you can get great, that you can even become extraordinary through an inhuman amount of effort, then you'll take the steps. Why? Because you know your efforts will be rewarded with results. That is the most important thing for you to believe, that your energies are going to be rewarded, because then you'll move forward. All right, here are the required beliefs if you're going to build a growth mindset: that you're roughly average. I don't need you to believe that you're extraordinary. Most of us are hopelessly average. That's what I'm always telling people. I was hopelessly average when I started. Nobody expected me to succeed. When I was growing up, nobody pointed at me and said, hey, that's going to be the kid that's going to do something with his life. My own mother, who's always been my biggest cheerleader, when I left for college, she quietly assumed I was going to fail. It was pretty hysterical. I didn't want to go to college. Not that I didn't want to go to college, but I didn't want to leave this state. I had this moment of panic. All my friends were going to a state school. I wanted to stay home. And it was my mother that kicked me out of the nest and all but forced me to leave. And then it's been every day since then trying to claw me back. And so one day I just asked her, Mom, why did you kick me out of the nest if you were just going to so desperately try to get me back? And she said with absolutely no malice, I just always assumed you were going to fail, and I didn't want you to wonder what if. And that was actually a really powerful gift for me, to be put in that perspective, to know that the person who cheered me on the loudest, just based on my behaviors, based on how lazy I was, based on how little work and energy I put into my life, didn't think I was going to be successful. My best friend recently, this was a really fun conversation, and my wife was right there, was there. I have witnesses. He said, yeah, dude, I just always assumed you were going to marshmallow, that's his quote, you were going to marshmallow your way through life. My father-in-law, when I went to ask for his blessing to marry his daughter, he said no, because he didn't think I was going to be able to take care of his daughter. Now, the important thing to realize about all these people is they did not misidentify me. They were accurate in assuming that based on my behaviors at that time, that I was not going to go on to be successful. And it is only because I finally cobbled together a growth mindset and began to believe, I decided that I lived in a friendly universe. I decided that the brain was plastic, that I could learn new things, that it wasn't set in stone at my birth. I decided to believe that my energies were going to be rewarded. So that is that foundation that you need. So all you need to do is believe that you are roughly average, that average is enough, that beliefs themselves are malleable. This is a big one. A lot of people don't understand that your beliefs, we talked about this in the first course, one of the things that hold people back is their beliefs accrue by accident, and they're not taking control of that. So you want to remember that many of the beliefs that you have in your life as of right now have been cobbled together by accident. You don't realize that they are things that you've chosen to believe. They seem like fact, but you need to begin to question all of these. So you need to believe that your beliefs are changeable. So as you go through this process, if I say something that you think, I could never do that, that is the very belief that you have to begin to change. Going back to our nice cheesy trite quote from Henry Ford, whether you believe you can or you can't, you are right. So we're going to be going through how to take those beliefs and adapt them. All right, your ability to grow and adapt, that's huge. You have to believe in that. We talked about that. It's the one belief that matters. The brain can change. That is another huge thing that is absolutely tied to you believing in yourself and your ability to get better. And for me, being able to imagine the process, and it's outside the scope of this class, but I highly encourage you guys to go research that and watch some of the videos as the way that neurons connect to each other and the way that connections are formed and learning happens. Being able to imagine it is very powerful. But for right now, you're going to choose to believe that the brain can change. And you need to believe that the brain changes via disciplined practice. So simply doing something over and over and over, that isn't going to do it. You've got to go into the areas that you're weak. I know everybody wants to practice the things that they're good at. And so that becomes just blind repetition. That's not what we're talking about. Improvement happens via disciplined practice, breaking things down to their constituent parts, picking the things that you are bad at, practicing them in a disciplined fashion until you are better. That's the way that you're going to level up your game. And speaking of leveling up your game, action cures all. You are not going to get better by pontificating. You're not going to find out whether you love something enough to really go after it by thinking about it. You're going to answer these big questions in your life by taking action. And we're going to talk about a massive bias towards action a little bit later. The other thing you need to believe is there is always a solution. Once you get in that frame of reference that every problem you face can be solved if you are ingenious enough, if you ask enough people, if you read enough books, there is a solution. And if you go into it with that, you will be shocked how inventive you can get. And if you find that you struggle with that, at least believing there is a solution is going to lead you to seek out experts in the field to ask and answer those questions. That is so important. I can't tell you, that sits, if you were to peel open my chest, glowing inside of my soul, you would see that notion glowing inside of me, because I really believe there's always a solution. And when you approach things from that perspective, you just find things past the point where everybody else gave up. So that one's huge. All right, the word yet is real. Yet is real. What do I mean by that? You suck at this thing now. Fine. I'm willing to accept that. You're hopelessly average. It's absolutely okay. There's going to be a laundry list of shit that you love, that you want to be amazing at, that you're not good at yet. And once you put that word yet on the end, everything changes, because it reminds you, I have the chills, it reminds you there's always a solution. It reminds you that the brain is plastic, that you can get better at anything through disciplined practice. And so once you begin attaching that word yet, you're going to be shocked. You go from having this like, oh, this gut reaction, this trigger of insecurities, all this landslide of shit that piles on top of your mind because you're feeling badly about yourself. You want to hide from the fact that you're not good at this thing that you value, or the people that you respect are far better than you at something that you really want to be the best at. But you can protect your self-esteem just by amending that phrase, I'm not good at this yet. And that will really open you up. And the last thing I want to talk about is the belief that human potential is nearly limitless. Now, I created a belief system. It's written down. You can get it for free. And it's the 25 beliefs that you need to really empower yourself. And the number one is human potential is nearly limitless. And the reason that you want to cultivate that belief all goes back to the only belief that matters, which is that your efforts are going to be rewarded. So it's worth putting in the time and the energy. And when you stop worrying about the upper limit, you stop worrying about whether you're going to be the next Jordan, you stop worrying about the laws of physics. It's hysterical. I used to say human potential is limitless, and people started wasting their time and mine by debating where that upper ceiling is. Sure, fine, there's an upper limit. I don't give a shit. The distance between where you are today and that upper limit is so fucking crazy far, you're just better acting as if there is no limit. So approach everything with the mindset that human potential is nearly limitless. All right, now it is time to get deep in the weeds. I want to give you guys the exact things that you're going to need to do to actually build a growth mindset. And I want you to know this is a process. It is not something that's going to happen overnight, but in putting the time and energy into this, you are literally going to be able to rewire your brain. And on the other side of this, have a different form to your brain, a different function, and be able to believe in yourself, be able to execute on your dreams, stay open to criticism, and develop. And it's all going to start with taking total ownership of your life. This is one area that I feel a lot of people fall down. And the reason is life is hard. It is so difficult to look at yourself and to say, my life is an exact reflection of my choices. I'm not a victim of circumstance. I'm not succumbing to luck or all the things that are happening around me. I am in control of my life. I have made decisions that have led me exactly here. Now, the reason that that is difficult is because life is so difficult, because we are all going to be victimized. It is very tempting to say that the bad things that have happened to me are something that are happening to me from the outside. But once we take total ownership, we realize one incredibly powerful thing. We can always make a different decision and get a different outcome. Once you understand that, then your mind goes immediately to that notion of there's always a solution. You're looking for the path forward. You're looking for the thing that you need to learn. You're looking for what you need to change. You're looking for the path that's different, that's going to take you away from where you are. And where you're holding on to the power, you're realizing you could make a different decision and get a different outcome. You stay in active mode. And like I said before, action cures everything. But when you feel that you're a victim from things oppressing you from the outside, then you stop. Then you stay still. Then you become stagnant. And all of the things that you want for your life never happen because you never put in the energy. So starting with total ownership, that's the absolutely critical thing. My favorite story to tell around this is, imagine this. My wife is British, true story. Now imagine that my wife is home in England with her mom. She's in the house that she grew up in. She's safe and sound. The doors are locked. The alarm is on. But then right then, a meteorite comes screaming through the atmosphere, smashes through the roof, and kills my wife. Whose fault is that? Now, if you don't know me and you're not trying to guess at what I think, your answer is probably going to be, it's nobody's fault, it's dumb luck, divine providence, just fate. Like, it didn't have to do with anybody's choices. But I will tell you right now, there's only one person to blame for that, and that is me. Now, why do I say that? One, just to remind myself that I could make different decisions that could have a different outcome, to remind myself that I'm still in a powerful position. I can change and adapt. But also because, and this is real, there is an organization right now that track what are called near-Earth objects. I know they exist, and they're looking for a way to knock a meteorite off course that is going to collide with Earth to make sure that we're always safe, whether it's lasers or planted nuclear explosion. Now, I know they exist, and I've never done anything to assist. I haven't sent them a dime of money. I've never sent them an email with encouraging ideas. I've never called them on the phone just to clap and encourage them. Nothing. Now, I think that's the right answer. I think that the likelihood of my wife being killed by a meteorite is so vanishingly slim that it doesn't make sense to put any time and energy into it. But I'm even on the board of the X Prize, and we had an opportunity to vote for a prize that would help deflect things like that from crashing into the Earth, and I voted against it. So, should my wife, God forbid, be killed by a meteorite, I would not waste time blaming other people. I would look solely at myself, not to beat myself up, not to be harsh on myself, only to remember one simple fact, that when you own your life, when you take responsibility for your decisions, you're always remembering, in making a different decision, you get a different outcome. And when you hit a roadblock, that is going to be so important to look at how you can improve, because you cannot control other people. You cannot control the world. So the one thing that you can control is you. And so if you give up power over the one thing that you actually can control, then you really are at the mercy of the world. And if you want to get somewhere in life, you cannot allow yourself to give away your power and be at the mercy of others. All right, the next thing that's critically important is to understand that what you build your self-esteem around matters. So the very basis of your self-esteem is a choice. Now, you want to talk about something that seems invisible, that people believe. Self-esteem is simply about being good, being right, being smart, all of those things. Of course, obviously, if you're good at something, then you should have self-esteem. And if you're a total piece of shit, you shouldn't. But the reality is, what you value yourself on is a total option. It's a choice. You can pick from a whole slew of things. And B, it will impact the rest of your life. I used to value myself for being good, for being right, for being smart. And in doing that, I created a very fragile ego. Because when I encountered somebody that was smarter than I was, it made me feel badly about myself. When I was around people that had better ideas than I had, it made me feel badly about myself. When I messed up on something and didn't think that I was doing good, then I felt badly about myself. And all of these things were chipping away at my self-esteem, and they were putting me in this really weird position that Carol Dweck warns about, which is that fixed mindset where you just want to put yourself in positions where you shine. This is where I referred to myself as the king of remedial jobs, and where I was going and applying for jobs that I knew I was overqualified for because my ego was so tied up in somebody saying, man, you're so smart, why are you here? And I lived for that. And because I lived for that, my life was getting smaller and smaller. And it was far less than it could have been because I just wanted to feel good about myself. And understanding that that drive, that need that we all have to feel good about who we are is dangerous and full of potential. Because humans instinctively move towards pleasure and they move away from pain. So when your identity is built around, when your self-esteem is built around something that is fragile, like being smart or being talented, then you're always going to be in a weak position. And what ended up happening was I was in business. I was telling you guys about that in the first section. I got invited by these entrepreneurs and they said, you can have any job in the company that you want, but you have to become the right person for that role. I was really trying, but I was in way over my head. They knew so much more than I did. Everybody around me seemed to know more than I did. And I really felt stupid all the time. And I cannot tell you, that was really hard for me. And I had this one day because I was telling my wife, I'm going to make you rich. I told your dad, I will make her rich one day. I promise. And I was pouring my heart and soul into that. And I was so hell-bent to get rich. And I wanted to be successful so badly that I was just going. And then I hit this moment where I'm like, I fucking hate my life. I hate everything about my life. And everything about the people that I'm around makes me feel worse about myself. And I had this moment of crisis. And I was arguing with the guys who would end up becoming my business partners. At the time, they were just my bosses. And I was arguing with them for an idea that I knew was worse. I knew it would move the company backwards, but I needed to win. I needed an idea that was mine to win. And so I was just fighting. And finally, they just relented. Not because I even think they thought it was a better idea, but they just didn't want to keep fighting with me about it. And in that moment, I had this crisis. I was like, fuck, do I really want to be successful? Am I really sincere when I tell my wife, I'm going to make you successful one day? Am I being honest with my father-in-law when I say, I will provide for your daughter? Or do I just want to feel good about myself? And the one thing I will give myself credit for in that moment, I didn't judge myself. And I just said, look, if what you really want is to just feel good about yourself, leave this company right now, go back to being the king of remedial jobs, because that really did feel good. And people telling me I was smart really did feel good. If, on the other hand, what you really want is you want to be successful, then you're going to have to suck it up and deal with not feeling good about yourself, because that's the only way that you're going to get better. And I realized that's never going to work. We need to feel good about ourselves. And so I thought, could I build my self-esteem around something else? And unfortunately, at the time, I had not read Nassim Taleb's book, Anti-Fragile, but now I can give you those words. And that brings us to our next point, which is you need to build an identity that is anti-fragile. And that starts with building your self-esteem around something that is anti-fragile. And the only thing that I've learned that will give you that truly anti-fragile mindset, identity, is to be a learner. Now, what anti-fragile is, there is things that are tough, there's things that are resilient, but both of those things are still defined by their breaking point. That breaking point may be very far away, but ultimately those things are defined by their breaking point. Something that is anti-fragile is something that grows stronger the more it's attacked. And being a learner is the only thing that I can think of that the more you attack it, the more resilient it becomes, the stronger and more robust it gets. So if you think about it, if I am stupid on something and somebody points that out and they say, oh man, you're so dumb. If my identity and my self-esteem is built around being smart, then in that moment I'm going to break because I realize, fuck, I really did mess it up. I really did do something stupid. If, on the other hand, my ego is tied up in being a learner, then all of a sudden when somebody says, hey, you're stupid, I'm like, tell me more. Because if they tell me in what way I actually am stupid, and this is what I really do in my real life, by the way, is when something hits and it's like, oh, that stings, I think to myself, well, I've gotten this far being that stupid. This is going to be amazing. If they really can lift the veil from my eyes and I can see the way in which I have been mistaken, now, through disciplined practice, I can get better. I may not be good at this thing yet. And once I amend that and put myself back in that notion of there's always a solution, then you can begin to move forward. So that is so critical, to have an anti-fragile ego identity and to think of yourself as the learner, that the very thing you value yourself for is learning. That's the key. And so when I was in those positions, what I started to value myself for was being the first to admit that I was wrong. So if I thought I had the right idea, I would fight for it, for sure. But once I realized, ooh, actually that person has a better argument than me, then I would say, hey, that's a great idea. And I would put all my energy into that and I would give them credit for it. And in doing that, in it always being willing to admit when I was wrong, and then celebrating other people's ideas, and then really putting energy behind that, I began to earn a reputation as being somebody that wasn't in it for their ego. But the irony is, I was in it for my ego, and you've got to find a way, because you're going to pursue things that gratify your ego. But if you're smart about the things that you train into your life to build your ego, is to be humble, to learn. Like my thing became, how fast can I admit that I was wrong? How long can I stare nakedly at my inadequacies so that I can figure out a way forward? Not that I want to be inadequate forever, but I wanted to really, truly be able to look at the truth of who I am, that what I'm good at, what I'm not, what I want to put the energy into growing, and whether or not I'm actually making progress. And that became huge. And the way that you end up doing something like that, the way that you end up making that change, is through the repetition of your beliefs. Repetition is probably one of the most underutilized things in the world. And there's really nothing complicated here. You just repeat the things that empower you. So go look at those 25 beliefs that we put up on our website, and really make those a part of your daily mantras. Interrupting your negative thoughts with those beliefs, it is incredibly powerful. Now, the way to really see all this through, the way to begin making the shift, is not just the repetition of those beliefs, it's the thing that you reward yourself for. And you're gonna need to get very good at emotionally rewarding yourself. And the thing that you wanna begin rewarding yourself for is the process. So Carol Dweck says, praise the process. And I think that that's an extraordinary way to go about it. So many people say, oh my God, you're so smart, that's amazing, you're so good, you're so talented. That's not the process. That's when people get protective. That's when you have a fixed mindset, because you're like, shit, I want to feel like this all the time. I want people to tell me I'm smart all the time. I know because I fell for it. And suddenly you start putting yourself into these areas where you're never being challenged because you want to feel good about yourself. You only feel good about yourself when people tell you that you're smart, good, talented, whatever. And the only time that you hear that is when you're in a non-challenging environment. Now, the only way to grow is to get outside your comfort zone, to be pushing yourself, to be out there, to be challenged, to be in difficult situations, to risk catastrophic fucking failure. And you're not going to do that if you're praising the outcome. But you have to also be cognizant of only praising effective strategy. So that process has to be useful. And we're going to talk more about this when we get into being aware of the false growth mindset. But know that you don't just emptily, if that's a word, praise the process. You have to praise a process that's actually effective. All right, I talked briefly about self-praise. The other thing you have to get good at is self-punishment. This is where people get really squeamish on me. But yes, you have to be able to call yourself to task when you're not doing the things that you said that you were going to do. And getting good at spending a bit of time saying, hey, you didn't do that thing, or you fucked that thing up, and you know better. I expect more from you. Hold yourself to a standard, to not be happy with yourself, maybe even to take something away or not do something that you would otherwise do to celebrate. That becomes really, really important. Effective punishment, not destructive. This is where people get into real trouble. I'm not saying to beat yourself into oblivion. And if you already struggle with depression or low self-esteem, this is not the strategy for you. You need to go address that first. But if you really want to develop all of your potential, you're going to have to find a way to effectively self-punish. So take that word with a grain of salt, look at my intent, see through what is going to be, I know, a triggering word for some people, and really understand what I'm saying. You want to uplift yourself, so you don't want to crush yourself down, but you want to be honest about when you're not living up to your own expectations. And until you can be honest, until you can look nakedly at where you're failing, until you're able to say, that's not okay, and I don't accept that from myself, then you're never gonna make progress. And this goes back to taking total ownership. And guys, I'm begging you, I don't get anything out of, to be honest, I don't get anything out whether you succeed or fail, but I so want people to win. I'm just wired to see other people win. I'm saying this because it is true. I'm saying this because it will serve you well if you can find a way to kick yourself in the ass when you need it without being destructive, without diminishing your sense of self. That's my big thing. Don't ever do anything that diminishes your sense of self. And that brings us to the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, you want to be thinking about the beautiful things that you're trying to bring into the world, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you love, the people that you love, the small things in life that just make things worth living, and never more than 20% in a negative or a dark emotion. If you keep that balance, I think that you'll find that it's Very easy to thrive, but so many people reverse it and they spend 80% of their time in negativity. They spend 80% of their time beating themselves up. That's self-defeating. It will never work, and it makes for a miserable life. So you're gonna have to put time and energy into uplifting yourself, into cheering yourself on, into reminding yourself that it's okay to be average, reminding yourself that it's okay for this to be hard, that this is a struggle. And the one thing I would say that you wanna remind yourself it's not okay to do, and that's to give up. You wanna keep making those demands of yourself, keep pushing yourself forward, but spend 80% of your time at least in positivity. All right, as they say, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I wish this weren't so, because it is very hard to, when you have people that you love, that you know are not empowering you. And I'm not saying that you need to cut them out of your life, but I'm saying that you do need to keep them in proportion. You need to be thinking about who are the people that I'm spending the most time with, and seek out people that are going to encourage you. Like I said, one of the biggest changes in my life was when I got into an entrepreneurial organization and people were holding themselves to a standard. They all had growth mindsets. They moved faster than I did, and they just knew they could achieve anything. And being around people that just know it, they just know it to the core of their being, that they can make come true in their life whatever they want. It's intoxicating because it allows you to then begin believing in yourself. So I want for you guys to find those people. And if you can't find them IRL, you can certainly find them in the Impact Theory University Facebook group. Go in, connect with people, and I'll even widen this out and say, you're the average of the 5 ideas you spend the most time with. So even if you can't connect with real people, start reading, connect with authors, do whatever you have to do to be around ideas that lift you up. All right, Carol Dweck has an amazing notion that she calls the false growth mindset. And this is where a lot of people get themselves in trouble. They think, oh my God, a growth mindset sounds amazing. Of course, I have a growth mindset, because we're all tempted to believe that we only do the things that are awesome and amazing. And what they start doing is they start praising empty process. They start saying things like, well, at least you tried, you gave it effort, effort's all that matters. And that just isn't true. The reality is you cannot praise empty process. That is the false growth mindset. A real growth mindset is about really fucking facing the hard challenges. It's about really accepting where you're weak. It's about really looking at your results. It's about getting obsessed with your results and wanting that. Because remember, your self-esteem is based on being the learner. So it's okay if you're messing up. It's okay if you're not doing the right things. None of that matters. What matters is sincere effort, that you're really giving yourself over to getting better, not playing at getting better, not pretending, actually getting better. Now, all of us have what we'll call fixed mindset triggers. And I'm almost certain I learned that from Carol Dweck. And your mindset triggers are the things that slip you back into a fixed mindset. Like, I will give you mine. There are 2 things that I really wish I were good at, but I don't even pursue, because some part of me believes that it would take too much energy, that maybe those are the limits. It's drawing and singing. And I just realized that sort of floating around those 2 things, I get bizarrely negative. So this is something that you want to identify in your life, whether it's something about intelligence, or if somebody says something to you, like if they tease you and you shut down and it puts you back in that fixed mindset. And when people give you a hard time about something, it makes you feel like, fuck it, like this isn't possible. I worked so hard and I can't get out of this. Whatever those things are for you, you want to identify those. It's pretty much anything that's going to trigger your insecurities, make you feel not smart enough. Those are things that you really, really need to watch out for. You can think of them as areas of poor belief. Figure what those are for you. Watch yourself when you slide into that so that you can get yourself out. The last thing that's a key part of all this is perseverance, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard called grit. And to develop grit is one of the most important things you could do in your life, because it is the thing that allows you to stick through things. Because having a growth mindset is just the foundation. It's just the thing that's going to allow you to grow and develop and get better. But if you don't actually have the fortitude to stick with it, you're never going to improve. And so you will suddenly find yourself making the decision by accident that life is working against you, because you're not sticking with it. You're not giving the process time to take hold. So if you want to stretch yourself, start doing hard things. I think that's an incredibly potent way to develop your grit. This could be a course unto itself, but I will just give you a couple quick things. Cold showers are awesome, and you can stretch the length that you can stay in it. Maybe in the beginning it's only 15 seconds, then maybe it's 30, then maybe it's 3 minutes, then maybe it's 10 minutes. Doing things like that, beginning to stretch your boundaries. Working out is another super powerful way to do something that's hard, to push yourself. And Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit, gives an amazing definition of what grit is. She says it's passion and perseverance over time. Now, passion, we could really go down a rabbit hole with that one. That one's critically important, but I will just say this. Passion is made up of interest and mastery. And you put those two together and you do it over time and you have grit. So go out, develop grit. All right, guys, as you're going through this, remember, you're not perfect. You're gonna get triggered into a fixed mindset from time to time. Things are going to seem impossibly overwhelming. You're going to feel like a victim and want to blame other people, and you're going to look outward. That's going to happen. And it's about being aware of it. It's about catching it. It's about using your beliefs to interrupt those patterns, using that repetition, coming back to those things. You can think of them as mantras, but reinforcing these empowering beliefs over and over and over. And if you do that on a long enough timeline, this is going to become second nature, and that's really your goal. But I just want to remind you, this is a process. So don't worry about, in the beginning, if you're stumbling a lot, if you're having to come back to your beliefs over and over and over, and it feels really hard, and it feels super manual, that's just part of the process. And remember, our favorite cheesy quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So I hope you guys will choose to believe that you can do anything you set your mind to. I hope you will choose to believe that your talent and intelligence are not fixed traits, that they are changeable, they're malleable. That is the very foundation of a growth mindset. And I hope that you choose to believe that your energies will be rewarded with increased skill, and that you remember that the word yet is magical. Tack it on to any statement of inadequacy. I'm not good at this yet. And you will find that it opens up a world for you because it encourages the effort, and action cures all. All right, guys, that's it for this section. Come back for section 3, and I will see you there. Until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to part 3 of Mindset 101. I'm super stoked that you guys are taking this class. This has been utterly transformational for me. Changing my mindset literally took me from feeling hopeless, lost, alone, being broke, and finally realizing I could take control of my life, get better at anything I wanted to, and it radically changed my life. And I'm really excited that you guys are committing to that in your own lives. And I want to tell you a story of somebody that used this and the degree to which it changed their lives. I think it's so cool to hear these stories of just absolute earth-shattering transformation. And back at Quest, this was like my mission, my fucking mission in life was to give this mindset to other people. And this is where my obsession with mindset started. We were in the inner cities and I was interviewing people like crazy. We were growing so fast. Quest grew by 57,000% in our first 3 years alone. I will say largely on the back of us having mindsets that we could learn and grow. And we were in an industry that we knew nothing about, but we knew that we could learn it, that we could get better, that we could figure it out, that we could solve problems. And it actually sent us down a path to solving problems other people just assumed were unsolvable. But it also put us in contact with people that had a very fixed mindset, that had beliefs about the world that were leading them down a path that was making them less than they could be. And when you're in the inner cities and you're interviewing and hiring people as rapidly as we are, I figured that I would just, like in any sample size I would get, or any sample population, I would get people all over the map. And I started asking this magic genie question because I wanted to know what people were really driven by. I wanted to know what their deepest passion was. And I wanted to see if we could align our selfish desires. And what I said was, a magic genie is about to show up. In fact, I'm curious. I want you guys to answer this question yourselves. A magic genie is about to show up. They're going to grant you one wish and one wish only. You can ask for anything you want, except you can't ask for more wishes. You can't cure cancer or bring somebody back from the dead. It has to be something for you, because I'm trying to figure out what you're really all about, what you really want. And you would think that we would get this extraordinary array of answers, and we got one answer over and over and over. And the first thing actually people said was, I want a job. And I'm like, yeah, right. This is a magic genie. What do you really want? And after I push people on, they're like, all right. What I want is money. Okay, rad. How much? Now, what are the odds that every single person ends up giving me that same answer? It just seems so absurd even now. And the answer that they gave me was $1 million. You can't even buy a house in LA for $1 million. I was literally like, what the fuck? Like, this is a magic genie. Dream big. Come up with some impossibly large number. Ask for $1 trillion or a money-making machine that will print money that will always be accepted. That way you never run out, something like that. But the fact that everyone said $1 million, it really got me thinking, like, what the fuck? It is such a terrible answer. And what I realized was that was their answer to an impossibly large amount of money. And that was where I became obsessed with this notion of frame of reference and frame of reference really mattering. And when your frame of reference is that the world is working against you and that your efforts are not going to be rewarded and that because you've never seen anybody get out and go on to be successful, then of course you think about yourself that you're never going to get out and be successful. And that very rapidly pushes people down the path to having a fixed mindset. And we had one kid, and being as how I'm looking at him right now, I will tell you his name. His name was Carlitos. And he came on the line, and he was just a really sort of interesting kid. He seemed really bright to me. I expected him to have a lot of drive and ambition, but the reality was he never thought positively about his future. And this was a kid that could go on to do anything. And he was the one that really made me think of this notion. I used to call it mining for astronauts. And I was like, dude, in Compton, which is where we were at the time, there are the next Einstein, the next like brilliant minds, the next Elon Musk, but they're never going to do anything with their lives because they don't believe that they can. They don't believe the one thing that matters, which is that their energy and effort will be rewarded with an increase in skill set, which they can then turn into whatever they want. And because he didn't believe that, he was living this small life and he wasn't doing anything. He had sort of the ultimate fixed mindset. He had a limited perspective. And like I said earlier, no one he knew had ever escaped. So it just seems self-evident. And that's where people make a mistake. They mistake their belief, their choice for objective truth. So in his mind, that was it. You worked in a business that was in the neighborhood. That was it. You had the skill set that you had. You were as smart as you were when you were born. And that was it. And your life was about making the most of those intelligence. Now remember, a fixed mindset is to believe that your talent and intelligence are fixed traits. You're born with it, baby. And it's just about living a life that makes the most of the hand that you were dealt. Somebody with a growth mindset, on the other hand, realizes that their talent and intelligence are malleable traits. And the whole point of taking this course, I want to beat this drum to death. The whole reason that you're taking this course is to go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, to cultivate the belief, to do whatever the fuck you have to do to get yourself to hardwire in your mind that just because you're not good at something today doesn't mean you can't be extraordinary at it tomorrow. And so I started talking to Carlitos about that, and I started talking to him about how weird I thought it was that people weren't dreaming big. And he was like, people in my neighborhood don't dream big. You don't see anything like that. The world doesn't want you to succeed like that. I thought, wow, it's fucking terrifying. And it really started to freak me out that the only thing separating me from this kid was the way I thought. Because he was at least as smart as I was. If I'm hopelessly average, he was at least hopelessly average. And maybe he was something even more if we could just begin to shape his mindset. And so I made him a deal. And I said, look, I'll make you a trade. You're very good on the line. You're a hard worker. The people trust you. They like you. You have a lot of credibility because you're always willing to work your ass off. So you take a shift, you watch over people, you run that shift, and then I'll help you get off the production line. I'll help you move up. And I said, but you have to tell me what skill you want. Because until you have that crystal clarity on what you want from your life, you're never going to be able to get where you want to go. And he said, all right, man, what I want to do is I want to learn how to code. To him, that was something he could learn. It was something that was exciting. He could see it could make him a lot of money, could make him 6 figures, which for him was this astronomical amount of money. And I said, all right, fantastic. The only thing standing between who you are today and that person that's able to make a 6-figure income as a coder is a set of skills. Now, the reason you don't have those set of skills is you haven't applied yourself because you lack the only belief that matters. You don't believe that putting your energy into learning something new will be rewarded by change because you think that you were born with a certain set of intelligence and talents and that's it, and you don't have these other ones. So breaking him out of that and getting him to realize that he could develop those, he started spending nights and weekends working his ass off. He decided to believe that he could get good at anything he set his mind to. Thusly, he put in the energy. Thusly, he started getting rewarded. He started getting a lot better. First, we gave him an internship with our tech team because we're like, you're not fucking good enough to pay yet. But if you keep working your ass off here, nights and weekends, and you're really earning your stripes, then you can move into a full-time position, which he ultimately did. And the punchline of his story is he got so good, Carlitos, that this motherfucker actually started his own business as a coder. Now, fair enough, he ends up deciding that he doesn't want to be an entrepreneur. He'd rather be in a group of people that are growth-minded, that push him. And so he ended up coming back, and I'm very encouraged to be reconnecting with him. And it's utterly fascinating to see this kid who didn't believe that he could do anything. He had never owned a fucking laptop, never owned a computer. And he goes from never owning a computer to teaching himself how to code using what, Khan Academy or something? He's taking classes, nights, weekends, learning all shit for free that he can find online. And he gets so good that he's able to now make a living as an independent contractor, as a coder. It's this extraordinary journey. He's just beginning. I cannot wait to see how far he goes. As somebody who has a growth mindset, as somebody who knows that when he applies himself, when he's disciplined, when he practices over and over, when he repeats these empowering things in his mind, that he actually gets better. And just because he's not good today doesn't mean that he's not going to be good tomorrow. And watching somebody do that year after year after year and watching them transform their lives is one of the most breathtaking things that can happen when you see somebody else do it. But now imagine you do it in your own life. Now imagine that you're Carlitos. Imagine that you take on that belief and you start applying yourself. All right. Now, while you're holding that fucking idea in your head, I want you to focus on the immediate actions you're going to take to change your life. All the things that Carlitos did, now you're going to apply to your own life, and you're going to do the following things. This is going to change your life, but you're going to have to stick with it. All right, now I'm presuming that you have this notion of a growth mindset. You know the things you have to believe. You know the things that you should be doing. These are going to be the things that you're going to do to reinforce that, to cement it in your mind and put it into action. Remember, action cures all. Almost every problem that you have in your life, the cure is to do something about it. It's never to sit back. It's never to be passive. It is to, in fact, I'll stop saying weak shit. It is to always take action, to do something, to change your situation, to make it what you want. It may be learning something new. It may be facing a fear. Maybe just getting off your ass and getting busy. But action is going to cure all. Now, as I said with Carlitos, number one, you have to have clarity. You have to know what you're going after. Until you have the clarity on your direction, you're never going to be able to move. Now, people always think that they're clear when they're not. And this is the classic example. Somebody will come to me and they say, Tom, I know exactly what I want to do. Awesome, man. What is it? I want to help people. That is hopelessly vague. Because remember, from where you are to where you want to be, there is a chasm. And that chasm is a chasm of skill set. To know what skills you need to acquire to cross that chasm requires you to be clear. When you say you want to help somebody, that's like saying you want to win a gold medal. In what? The Olympics? Yes, Tom, I want a gold in the Olympics. I want to win a gold in the Olympics. Fantastic. Summer or winter? Summer? Great. Which sport? Tennis or swimming? Swimming? Wonderful. What event? Backstroke? Freestyle medley? Until you know exactly what event and what sport you want to compete at, you're not going to know what skills you need to develop. Now, the key to developing those skills, the key to making the most of that clarity is to develop passion. People often think that passion, like talent and intelligence, is something that you're born with. You are not, punchline, you're not born with passion. So if you don't have passion in your life, it's because you haven't developed that passion yet. That's a whole course unto itself, but I will give you the quick breakdown. Passion, which is required to persevere, which is why it's so important right now when we're talking about a growth mindset. Passion is interest that you explore enough to turn into a fascination, and then you gain mastery. Fascination or interest plus mastery equals passion. As Angela Duckworth defines grit, grit is passion and perseverance over time. So getting that passion to couple with your clarity is gonna give you the energy that you need to see things through. But you need that direction in order to develop that passion. So I want you to write it down. That's when you know you have something clear. It's so clear you can write it down. Once you can write it down in a very simple, clear sentence, you're gonna understand the skills that you need to acquire in order to move forward. And then, my friends, develop said skills. Number 2, you want to hang up the essential beliefs for a growth mindset. I think that seeing this stuff, being around it, the power of repetition is really important. And an idea that I want to quickly introduce you to is the notion of self-signaling. I think self-signaling is a big thing. And if you ever see me wearing my Jedi necklace, or you see me wearing one of my shirts that talk about a whole host of things, from having a growth mindset to doing that which moves you forward. I'm the type of person that, like, all the things that I wear to remind myself of who I am, what my belief system is, I'm signaling to myself. So if you see me wearing a Yoda shirt, it's because I really believe there is no try, do or do not. Things like that. Like, that may seem silly and goofy, but putting it in your life, you're self-signaling to yourself what's important, what's powerful. Number 3, you want to audit your self-narrative. Self-narrative is a book unto itself, let alone a class. But you want to be very, very aware of what your self-narrative is. And you're going to take over that process. You're going to begin to construct a new narrative, an empowering narrative, the narrative of an anti-fragile. We talked about that in the last section. An anti-fragile learner. That is critical. Let that become your narrative. You're the learner. So it doesn't matter if you know something today. You focus on being a learner. You value yourself for being a learner. I'm a learner. I learn fast. I go in. I dive deep in a subject. I'm willing to face my inadequacies. I don't allow myself to be insecure because of something that, I don't know, or I am embarrassed in public. Somebody asked me a question and I don't know the answer. In my interview show, if I don't know, I'm just going to fucking ask. Like, if somebody says something and I'm essentially on national television, we have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube alone, and if I don't know, I'm just going to say, yeah, I don't know that. And the funny, it's not even hard for me. And when I first started doing it, people were like, they would, call it out in the comments, like, whoa, I can't believe that you'd admit that you don't know that. And the thing is, because my ego is so big and so raging, but it's entirely around being the learner, that moment of admitting that I don't know something is exactly how I empower myself. So you want to build that identity of the anti-fragile learner. You also want to eliminate your limiting beliefs. All of us, even I still today, have limiting beliefs, things that I think that, I'd really struggle to get good at that or whatever. And I called 2 of them out before, singing and drawing. And you want to, one by one, get rid of the limiting beliefs in your life. There are things that you want, you're excited about, maybe you're even passionate about, but you don't think that you're ever going to be one of the greats. And you need to set that aside and understand that on a long enough timeline, you can win at anything. The next thing is your negative voice. We all have a negative voice in our heads. And oftentimes people are asking me, Tom, what do you do to get rid of the negative voice? And the reality is, I don't even make an attempt to get rid of the negative voice. What I try to do is turn that negative voice into a habit loop trigger. Meaning, every time the negative voice jumps up, tells me that I can't do something, then I use that as a habit loop trigger to repeat one of my empowering phrases. I'm not good at this yet, or I can do anything I set my mind to without limitation. Whatever the thing is that's appropriate to whatever the negative voice is saying in that moment, the negative voice doesn't have the sway over me because it reminds me to think something that's empowering. And if you've done what we just talked about and you've printed out the belief systems from the first section, you have these things around you, you're gonna have plenty of things that you're soaking in that are going to be readily available for you. When you have that negative thought, you'll know exactly what to replace it with. Number 4, you want to acquire skills. The chasm of skill set between who you are and who you want to be is a chasm of skill set. And the whole idea behind a growth mindset is to acquire skills. Remember, the growth mindset is just giving you the foundation you need to go operate in the world, to not be shut down by criticism, to not shrink back in the face of challenge. You reframe that challenge. You remember that the human animal can grow and adapt, and that through disciplined practice, you can get good at something. So it's okay to not be good today. You're gonna get good on the things you care about because you have the clarity, you know exactly what skills you need to acquire, and now you're going down the focused, disciplined practice path of gaining those skills. And in that process, you're gonna have to do things that are hard, you're gonna have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, and you're gonna have to repeat, repeat, repeat. Number 5, you're gonna audit your pattern of quitting. I think a lot of people quit under the guise of, oh, it just wasn't as exciting as I thought it was gonna be. But you really need to look at, do you actually have a lack of grit? Because if you find that you start one or two things, you get into it and you realize, I'm not really that into this, and you quit, hey, fair enough, so be it. Or if something legitimately is not worth the time and energy, like when I think about singing, for instance, I don't want it badly enough to put in the time and energy on that, because I don't get early wins in singing. So, and that goes to, none of us are blank slates. We all have things that we're better at than others. And so for me, singing is one of those things that while I could get far better than I am today, and I fully acknowledge that, I don't like it enough to put in the time and energy. So thinking about something like that and really looking at, is it that? Have I really just accurately identified something I don't want badly enough to go after it? Or have I not developed grit? Have I not developed the passion that I need and the perseverance to see things through over time? And one thing that I always tell entrepreneurs is boredom kills far more entrepreneurs than fear or failure. It's that people get bored and they don't have the grit, the fortitude to see things through. So really be honest with yourself about where you are there. Number 6, read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. It is extraordinary. It's going to reinforce all the things we've talked about here. I think that book is so, so, so important. Read that book. Number 7, journal about your growth mindset. Journaling, I think, is really big. And this is something that's helped me a lot. I actually really got into this hardcore about a year ago, and I really started just using it as a way to think through a process, to reinforce things, just to write. And I write in true stream of consciousness. So do not worry about whether or not you're a good writer. When I'm writing in my journal, I actually type, I don't know, should I? Because I find that there's something, and I don't type with those single fingers, I'm quite good. I'm doing all that. I find that it slows my mind down enough. And in typing all of that stuff, I really let my mind sort of pace itself at the rhythm that I can write at. So I write out every single thought that I have, and it's really weird. It's like talking to yourself. And so you're having this really profound dialogue, and it's solidifying ideas. It's allowing you to explore. It's reinforcing. It's part of the repetition pathway. So I highly, highly encourage you guys to journal about what's positive about a growth mindset. Why do you want to do it? It's going to be a way like obsession. In fact, that's number 8, is to become obsessed with the idea of yet. But that whole notion of obsession is really critical, and you can get that out in the journaling. So even journaling by adding yet, by talking about something that you're not good at yet, but that you want to get good at, and writing the word yet, and saying, hey, I really value this thing and I really want to get good at it, but I'm not good at it yet. And I might sit there and go, yet in my journal. And that's the kind of thing that just reinforces it, and steeping yourself in that, becoming obsessed with that, and really just reinforcing the stuff in your life is incredibly powerful. So never lose sight of the power of yet. Don't lose sight of the power of repetition, and definitely don't lose sight of the power of journaling. All right, number 9, you're going to want to join a community. We talked about in the previous section, you are the average of the 5 people, and maybe ideas is an even better way to say it, but you're the average of the 5 ideas you spend the most time with. And as a social animal, it gets reinforced so much more powerfully when you're a part of a community. Other people, especially if you like and respect them, and you want to adhere to the values of the group, that is so powerful. And that's one of the reasons that we have a community around Impact Theory University. And you guys, as a member taking this class, you have access to that, and I highly encourage you guys to get involved with that. And then whenever possible, get involved with people in real life. I think that that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. All right, guys. I think one of the most powerful things anyone can give you is doubt. And if you're like me and you place a fucking chip right on your shoulder and that drives you in the really hard times, I think that's ultra, ultra powerful. But remember, 80-20. You want to spend 80% of the time in the light, in the beauty, in the things that bring you joy and all that. So I want to give you a piece of joy right now. And I want to say this. I believe in you. And I believe in you because you're average. And average is enough. Humans are designed to grow and adapt. The brain is changeable. A growth mindset is attainable. You can do the things that you need to do to realize that our talent and intelligence are not fixed traits. They are malleable traits, things that you can change. You can learn to begin to identify your triggers that slide you into a fixed mindset, that make you want to shut down and shy away from challenge. And with that, growth mindset, the belief that your energies and efforts are going to be rewarded with growth, then all of a sudden you can take on that ownership for your life because it becomes exciting. And you start to realize that owning your life and taking responsibility for your choices and taking responsibility for where your life is the most exciting and beautiful thing that you could do, because you can get better. And you can realize, like Carlitos, no matter where you grow up, no matter how hard things have been for you, there is a path out. And that path is a growth mindset. I really, really hope that the information in this class is as life-changing for you guys as it was for me. I'm so passionate about passing this information on. It changed my life in ways that are so profound. It didn't just change my life, it changed the lives of my family. And I hope that it now is passed on to you and it changes your life and you're able to pass it on to other people and it will change their life. And guys, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. We will definitely be engaging and answering people's questions. I'm beyond honored that you joined me for this. And I'm beyond honored, and the thing that I care most about is that you're committing to yourself to develop a growth mindset. I really believe if more people do this, we can have the kind of impact in the world that we want to have. And if you want to know what my theory on how to impact people is, it's this: to give them a growth mindset and to do it at scale. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care.